Hello everyone, I'm Force McFreelava, and this is Speedplay France and Hearts of Iron 4, number 3. We left off with half of Italy under our control, our armored units all pressing forward. The Molotov-Ribbentrop Pact has been signed, which is pretty terrible news. It does, to our benefit, mean that the Nazis will hopefully be fighting the Poles in a little bit. To our detriment, though, it means that they're not going to be fighting the Soviets, at least not for a while. Which has a pretty negative effect in the sense that it means that we might be forced to fight the Germans all on our lonesome. Now, if the Germans fight as poorly as the Italians, I know that's maybe a ridiculous thing to hope for, then we're going to have a really good time with it, or at least a quick and easy time with it. Since the Italians have already lost the vast majority of their armed forces, our armored units are just kind of plowing in through the remainder of their countryside at this point. We're not winning out loud in every single battle that we're fighting against them. However, we are winning in a pretty large number of them. We also just managed to take a port, so our infantry and tank unit that were about to be just completely destroyed now can be resupplied, and even more troops have been shipped in. Thank you, AI. So it looks as though that situation is more or less resolving itself. We're going to even go up and hopefully just take Rome in a second, which isn't even defended because their forces are just so battered and beaten down. So there we go, the fall of Rome. We went ahead and had a triumph, apparently, in the streets, which is kind of amazing. And now we're going to break away one of our motorized units, try to not lose over there next to Venice. And there we go, Italy has capitulated. They're still chilling on Sardinia, which was actually our war goal, which is a little upsetting. Other than that, though, we're pretty much ready to go fight the Germans, which is great because that's really all we can do right now. Yugoslavia is with the Allies, and Czechoslovakia is still alive. So that's all pretty great. Hopefully we won't actually fight too terribly, and it looks like we did lose one battle, but that shouldn't be the worst thing. We go ahead and just send our armored units up just to test the waters there. It looks like we won't be able to win, so we're going to send them over to Luxembourg and really just kind of probe the German front line for weaknesses. The idea being that as long as we're able to just carve a path through into Germany somehow, we'll be able to start encircling and destroying their forces. Now, I mentioned that, but it looks as though we're actually the ones getting pushed back as they pressed through, I guess, the Alps, sort of, if that's still the Alps, that far over into the east. Anyway, though, so we are not doing great right there. However, it's not as though the situation is desperate. We're pulling our armored units back over to that area, away from Alsace-Lorraine, where, quite frankly, we're not really expecting to make any progress. And what we're going to do is just use our armored units to shore up any areas where the defense is going somewhat poorly. For example, right there where the defense is going very poorly. And it looks as though all of a sudden we've just collapsed over there, so we're going to start pulling our units back. That battle just went from okay to terrible immediately, which is very worrying. If we're able to just get any units in there quickly enough, and okay, so we just lost a good portion of our military. We even lost an area that we were hoping to hold defensively, which is rather bad. In fact, very bad. Our plan was to defend against the river. It looks as though that is no longer feasible. That's far less than ideal. We're also losing that battle. We don't really even need to be fighting there. We're trying to take back that one, basically just advanced German position. It looks as though that's not actually working very well whatsoever. We're going to produce even more armored units, since that is now a very top priority to just get more units in the field. We retreat back to our side of the river, where hopefully we'll be able to maintain some sort of coherent defense. And it looks as though we have troops on all of the key border areas right there. So hopefully we'll be able to maintain the line. The Germans are trying to press. Luckily there is another river, so as long as we're able to hold this southern river, we should be good. From there, it'll just be a matter of maintaining control over the area just kind of around Milan. If we can hold this territory, mainly that middle portion where they're able to attack us from our side of the river, we need to be able to hold that key province in the middle of our front line. If that doesn't work, then we're probably going to have to abandon the entirety of Italy. I don't want to do that. That would be terrible. It would give the Germans a lot of industrial capacity, which we were able to take for ourselves. So yeah, if we lose Italy, we're going to be in a pretty bad spot. This is also the moment where it's becoming just devastatingly apparent that just because we became fascists and took over two countries does not just mean that we are inherently capable now of fighting the Germans off. You'll notice we're also producing quite a few infantry groups, also quite a few armored groups. The idea being with that, we just need as many forces as possible, as quickly as possible. We're also going to go ahead and switch to a more, I guess, inclusive, conscription policy, as it's becoming rather apparent that the French state is going to need really everything that it can get. We may not have enough political power to actually go as far as we need to, and you'll notice that our front line is getting pushed back even further in the center, which is far less than ideal. However, we are cycling units in and out of this front, keeping it at least somewhat solvent, which is really the top thing. We were nearly losing over on the right, which would be pretty terrible, but we are holding out more or less. There are partisan activities all throughout Italy which are just causing damage to the infrastructure we've gained from the Italian state. Not ideal. And it looks as though we're not able to actually advance back across the river, so we're just going to have to defend for now. The defense is going rather poorly, but all of a sudden it looks as though we are winning that battle, which is just a fantastic change. If we can just maintain, that is really all we need to do. As long as we can just maintain, we'll look for opportunities to actually turn the tide of the war against the Germans, but at this point we are definitively on the defensive. We do start researching better tanks, more industrial technologies, really just anything that will help us. Production is probably one of the places we're hurting the most, just since we don't have enough production to really keep all of our tanks and other units at just peak condition. It doesn't help that we're building quite a few new units as well. Luckily though, it looks as though the front is at least somewhat stable. We can't actually realistically make any attacks. We are trying in a couple areas though, but we give up on that pretty quickly since it just does not appear to be working. We try to counterattack to press back over here and get back to the river. That doesn't actually look to be going in our favor, although it is going well enough to keep fighting it. We do end up giving that up since it just doesn't appear to really be worthwhile. We are managing to defend up north in the mountains fairly well though, which is very nice. And ultimately we are still tagging up our military, hopefully at something of an equivalent rate to the Germans. And it looks as though we're actually winning this battle now that we've come back to it with more forces. We've even got another armored unit coming to assist. And it looks as though we may, if we're lucky, be able to press over to the river in the near-ish future. That would be obviously the ideal. Whether or not that really ends up happening, it looks as though it may. And we're bringing even more support units. We are getting attacked up in the mountains again, but it looks as though we will finally be able to press back to the river. And while we aren't really in a position, okay, it looks as though the Soviets declared war on Poland, so that's all going on. I expect the Germans will probably do the same in a near moment. We do not have air superiority. You'll notice planes just crashing all around the Italian front and flying all about. Those are almost all German planes, except for the ones getting shot down, more likely than not. We did take back the position on the river, despite having a disadvantaged force on the ground compared to their air forces. Although it looks like it's more or less stabilized. The Soviets are pressing over towards the German border. Hopefully they'll get sick of the Molotov-Ribbentrop Pact. It looks like a whole bunch of stuff is going on. Italy has claimed Yugoslavian territory despite the fact that they are just Sardinia now. So, I mean, good luck, Italy. I'm glad that your government in exile thinks it's capable of that sort of thing, but alright, so the Germans just declared war on Poland, which is interesting. They're also fighting the Polish alliance bloc. Czechoslovakia still exists in some form. So that's very interesting. Hopefully that distracts their forces enough that we're able to make something of a counterattack, although at this point it doesn't really seem as though that's something about to happen. A very likely circumstance, Yugoslavia is still very much alive. A likely circumstance is that we'll just kind of hold out. It looks as though we are managing to defend our portion of the river right there, which is just fantastic news. We might try to push over all the way to the very edge, but it doesn't seem as though that's likely to happen anytime soon with anything resembling success. Some of our AI units are trying to attack, but I'm not really feeling that. We do attempt an attack. It just does not look as though it's going to go very well, though, so we do pull that back and call it off. Right now is really the best opportunity we have, though, since the Germans are fighting the Poles, the Czechs, the Yugoslavs, and ourselves. Although we just really can't make any gains. Luckily, It doesn't look as though the Germans are making much progress, so most of their forces are probably still here, which means once the Polish War ends, we hopefully won't see a massive buildup of German forces. Worryingly, though, okay, they just claimed Scandinavia, which is great, and declared war on the Netherlands, which is not great at all. And there we go, they've declared war on Belgium, which means we're going to go ahead and ask for military access and run these forces up. Go ahead and just move the front line and cancel the front line behind Belgium. We are now very much at risk of having the World War II actual thing that killed France happen to us now. We go ahead and create a new defensive line, which kind of doesn't go very well. We put a new front line in front of it. Hopefully that will actually hold our units. We should also probably build a front line over in front of the Netherlands as well, get access from them, maybe try to defend all of that. How well that goes remains to be seen. We also go ahead and just start setting up all of our units to spawn in northern France, and we just deploy them all right now as raw recruits. Obviously, they're going to fight very poorly since they're raw recruits. However, they're better than no troops at all, and we're going to try to limit the German advance through the Ardennes and just through the entire Belgian area. Most of the Allied forces which are helping us are probably all on either the Italian front or near Alsace-Lorraine, and all of a sudden Poland is killed. It looks as though the peace deal is just grotesque, but what can you really do about that? We're going to have to almost certainly fight a pretty bad fighting retreat. We probably should have put our new recruits on the Maginot line and used our trained units to defend the rest. That would have been smart. Luckily, for the next episode, we can probably make that shift if we're able to dislodge our forces enough. With all that said, though, the situation is obviously non-ideal. We do have some armored units we're able to bring over. Hopefully, since this front is more or less stabilized, we can start pulling armored units over to the Low Countries, to the Benelux region, hopefully prevent the complete collapse of those areas. We also do now have the Belgians and the Dutch on our side, so if we manage to keep them from capitulating, they should provide a pretty decent amount of forces to, stay in the fight and not just collapse the line to the Germans. We also did manage to prove our ability to actually hold our own in Italy. So if we can just make that same thing evident over in the far north, then I think that this is something we will be able to pull off, do more or less successfully, and hopefully not collapse. Unfortunately, we did lose that river position as we are pulling some of our forces away. Luckily, it looks as though they're pulling their forces back, so we do begin a somewhat minor offensive, but a minor offensive can quickly turn into a major offensive if we can just get some of our armored units behind their lines. A really dangerous risk, though, is their front in Italy is probably so weak because they're shipping so many forces up to a far more vital front, which is up in Benelux. At any rate, we're going to stop here for now as things get very tense. Thank you very much for watching. Please like, share, and subscribe. Sorry this episode's out so late. Tomorrow's will be out on time, I hope. Thanks again for watching. Have a great day.